22% of his missile commanders failed to launch their missiles. What am I supposed to tell him? 22% isn't so bad?
The president knows that I am fully responsible for the men in my command.
WarGames wasn't just a sci-fi thriller about a kid who accidentally hacks into a military supercomputer. It was a prescient warning about technology that terrified the Pentagon, changed U.S. nuclear policy, and launched an entirely new cultural understanding of computer hacking. Behind the cheerful beeps and flickering screens was a chaotic production battling studio skepticism, technical limitations, and Cold War paranoia. The film that taught a generation to fear the words global thermonuclear war nearly didn't happen. From last-minute casting changes to military advisors shutting down scenes, from fake computers built from plywood to actors nearly electrocuted on set, the story behind WarGames is as tense and unpredictable as the film itself. Today I'm bringing you 20 weird facts about WarGames that you've never heard before. And stick around until the end for the bonus fact that connects this 1983 thriller to modern-day cybersecurity in ways that will blow your mind. So grab your acoustic coupler, dial into these secrets, and let's play a game. The movie that changed nuclear policy. WarGames didn't just entertain audiences, it literally altered U.S. military strategy. When President Ronald Reagan watched the film in 1983, he became deeply disturbed by its premise. During a high-level Pentagon meeting the following week, Reagan directly referenced the movie and asked his Joint Chiefs of Staff, "Could something like this actually happen?" The generals admitted it was possible. This single screening prompted Reagan to order a comprehensive review of military computer security. The result? National Security Decision Directive 145, the first presidential directive on computer security, which fundamentally reshaped how the military handled its electronic systems. The film's depiction of automated response systems and their potential failures directly influenced discussions that led to significant changes in nuclear command and control protocols. Not bad for a movie that the studio initially considered shelving as too complicated for audiences. Matthew Broderick had no idea what he was doing. When cast as teenage hacker David Lightman, Matthew Broderick had never even touched a computer. It wasn't method acting, it was complete technological ignorance. Director John Badham embraced this, deliberately keeping Broderick away from actual programmers and technical advisors. "I didn't want Matthew to look comfortable," Badham explained years later. "I wanted that sense of wonder and discovery to be genuine." When filming the scenes where Lightman interacts with the Whopper supercomputer, Broderick was often reading his lines off cue cards, having no idea what the technical jargon actually meant. The irony? Broderick's authentic bewilderment while typing random commands perfectly captured the character's frantic exploration. His technological innocence translated into a performance that felt genuine to audiences, making the high-stakes scenario more believable. So when Broderick's face lights up with shock as he accidentally accesses missile launch codes, that wasn't acting. It was genuine surprise at what the prop department had programmed to appear on screen. The original script was much darker. The WarGames we know wasn't the story writers Lawrence Lasker and Walter Parks initially conceived. Their original script, titled The Genius, centered on a brilliant but disturbed scientist who builds a world-ending supercomputer while being pursued by the government, not a teenager in sight. During research, the writers interviewed Stanford computer scientist Stephen Hawking about artificial intelligence. When leaving his office, they noticed a teenager waiting to meet Hawking, a brilliant young hacker who had broken into NORAD's computers. Just like that, their story transformed. The script still remained darker than the final film. In early drafts, David's girlfriend Jennifer, Ali Sheedy, was killed during their escape from NORAD. The WOPR actually launched several missiles that couldn't be recalled, and the final scenes showed widespread panic as the world braced for nuclear winter. Studio executives pushed back, insisting on a more hopeful ending for what was marketed as a teen-oriented thriller. The original ending exists only in early drafts locked away in studio archives, a glimpse of the much bleaker film that might have been. Those weren't real computers. Despite its reputation for technical accuracy, almost none of the computers seen in WarGames were functional. The massive WoWopera supercomputer, the film's technological antagonist, was nothing but a steel frame with blinking Christmas lights and plastic panels. The impressive displays showing missile trajectories and war simulations, they were pre-recorded animations played on screens embedded in the set. Even David Lightman's bedroom setup was largely smoke and mirrors. His personal computer was a non-functional MSI 8080 shell with a tape drive that did nothing. The actual computing shown on screen came from a completely different computer hidden beneath the desk, operated by off-camera technicians following a carefully choreographed script. The most ironic deception? The famous scene where NORAD technicians watch the Whopper rapidly cycling through launch codes? Those displays were created by filming Las Vegas slot machines and superimposing numbers over the spinning fruit symbols. Literal gambling imagery used to represent humanity's fate hanging in the balance. The military banned the film crew. The Pentagon initially agreed to cooperate with the production, allowing the filmmakers to tour NORAD's actual command center inside Cheyenne Mountain. 2 weeks of planning went into the visit, with military officials reviewing scripts and clearing the production team for limited access to the facility. The day before the scheduled tour, everything changed. A high-ranking Air Force general reviewed the script's premise, a teenager hacking into military systems, and immediately revoked all cooperation. Not only was the tour canceled, but the Department of Defense issued a formal statement distancing itself from the project, calling it dangerous fantasy that could inspire actual security breaches. Director John Badham was forced to create NORAD's war room entirely from imagination, working with production designer Angelo Graham to build an elaborate 3-level set on sound stages. Ironically, years later, military officials admitted the fictional command center looked more impressive than the real thing, with its dramatic lighting and elevated command platform. The film's depiction became so iconic that visitors to the actual NORAD facility frequently expressed disappointment at how ordinary the real command center appeared compared to the movie version. The hacking was too real. While the computers may have been fake, the hacking techniques shown were alarmingly accurate. Technical consultant Willis Ware, a computer security expert from RAND Corporation, provided such detailed information about potential military system vulnerabilities that several scenes had to be rewritten at the government's request. The infamous War Dialer program that David uses to find WOPR by calling random numbers looking for a computer modem. Within weeks of the film's release, the actual code was being distributed in computer hobbyist newsletters. Phone companies reported a surge in unexplained automated calls as teenagers across America ran their own war dialers, searching for vulnerable systems. Most concerning to security experts was the film's depiction of social engineering, using personal research to guess passwords. The scene where David researches the system designer and uses his son's name as a backdoor password was so accurate that it prompted the NSA to issue a classified memo to government contractors about password security. The film didn't just portray hacking, it provided a functional tutorial that security professionals still reference when discussing how pop culture influences cybersecurity threats. John Lennon was almost the star. Before settling on a teenage protagonist, the filmmakers considered a wildly different approach. Early development documents reveal that producer Leonard Goldberg wanted to cast John Lennon as Dr. Stephen Falcon, the reclusive genius who creates the WOPR system. The concept would have positioned Falcon as the central character, a brilliant but disillusioned scientist who must stop his own creation from destroying the world. Goldberg had preliminary discussions with Lennon's representatives in late 1980, believing the former Beatles' anti-war activism would add symbolic weight to the film's message. These plans were tragically derailed by Lennon's murder in December 1980. The production team, shaken by the loss and forced to reconceptualize, shifted focus to the teenage hacker character that would eventually become David Lightman. The role of Falcon was significantly reduced, ultimately going to John Wood as a supporting character. The film we know today emerged from this dramatic change in direction, a teen adventure born from a concept originally intended as a somber adult drama starring one of music's most iconic peace advocates. Reagan's White House requested a private screening. The film's impact on President Reagan is well documented, but what many don't know is that the White House requested the screening before WarGames even hit theaters. After hearing about the premise from a Pentagon advisor who had read a pre-release review, Reagan's science advisor, George Keyworth, arranged for MGM to provide a private screening at Camp David. According to White House logs, the screening was attended not just by the President and First Lady, but also by representatives from the National Security Council, DARPA, and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Reagan was reportedly silent throughout the film, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. 3 days after the screening, the president convened a closed-door meeting with defense contractors and computer scientists to discuss the plausibility of the film's scenario. The notes from this meeting remained classified until 2008 when they were released under the Freedom of Information Act. They revealed that Reagan repeatedly referenced specific scenes from the film, asking, "Could someone really do this? And how secure are our fail-safes?" The meeting directly led to the formation of the first Presidential Commission on Computer Security, fundamentally changing how the government approached what would later be called cybersecurity. The computer voice has a surprising origin. The eerily calm voice of the W-Opera computer, which delivers the film's most famous line, "Shall we play a game?" has a remarkable origin story. While most assume it was created using advanced synthesizer technology, the voice was actually performed by a 13-year-old boy. Director John Badham was dissatisfied with the adult voice actors and computerized voices proposed by the sound department. They all sounded too robotic or too human. During a lunch break, Badham overheard David Goldberg, the young son of one of the sound engineers, reading aloud from the script in a curiously flat, affectless tone. Badham immediately recognized the unsettling quality he wanted, a voice that straddled the uncanny valley between human and machine. Young Goldberg was recorded reading all of Whopper's lines, with his voice later subtly processed to add a slight electronic quality. The result was the distinctively unnerving voice that helped make the computer feel like a true character. Goldberg received no screen credit for his work, and his contribution remained unknown until a 25th anniversary retrospective documentary revealed this secret behind one of cinema's most memorable artificial intelligences. Hey everyone, we're halfway through our countdown of shocking WarGames facts. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because there's plenty more classified information coming your way, including the bizarre accident that almost electrocuted the entire cast and the real government program that was shut down because of this movie. Let's continue our game. The original director was fired 3 days into production. WarGames began filming under director Martin Brest. Just 3 days into production, studio executives reviewed the initial footage and were horrified by what they saw. Brest was shooting the film as a dark, paranoid thriller with minimal dialogue and documentary-style camera work. It looked like a European art film about nuclear annihilation, one executive reportedly complained. After a heated confrontation, Brest was fired on the spot and the crew was sent home while the studio scrambled for a replacement. John Badham was brought in with just 36 hours to prepare before resuming filming. He immediately recognized the tonal mismatch, later explaining, "They'd hired me to make a completely different movie than what Martin was making." Badham quickly rewrote scenes to add humor and lighten the mood, focusing on the adventure aspects rather than the apocalyptic themes. The only footage from Brest's version that remains in the final film is a brief exterior shot of David's high school, a 3-second reminder of the entirely different movie that almost was. The FBI monitored the production. Throughout filming, the production was quietly monitored by FBI counterintelligence agents concerned about potential security risks. The Bureau's involvement wasn't discovered until decades later when documents were released through FOIA requests. The surveillance began after technical consultants requested specific information about NORAD communications protocols and early warning systems. These requests raised red flags within the defense community, especially given the Cold War tensions of the early 1980s. The FBI assigned 2 agents to the production under the guise of technical advisors from the Department of Defense. These agents reviewed daily script changes and monitored discussions between the writers and actual technical consultants. In one memo, an agent expressed concern that the film was assembling a potentially dangerous blueprint for cyber attacks against military infrastructure. The surveillance ended only after the agents concluded the final script had been sufficiently sanitized of actionable intelligence. None of the cast or primary crew were aware of this surveillance until the documents became public in 2007, revealing how seriously the government took the film's premise. Ally Sheedy failed every computer class she ever took. In a perfect irony, Ally Sheedy, who played Jennifer, the computer-savvy love interest, had consistently failed every computer class she had ever taken. While her character confidently navigates the digital world alongside David, Sheedy herself admitted she was completely computer illiterate and terrified of technology. During the scenes where Jennifer had to type commands, Sheedy struggled so much that the production team eventually created cue cards with phonetically spelled commands. Even then, her typing was so awkward that many close-up shots of Jennifer's hands actually feature a hand double. The 16-year-old daughter of a set decorator who could type 85 words per minute. Sheedy's technological challenges extended beyond typing. During the pivotal NORAD scenes, she repeatedly pressed the wrong buttons on control panels, accidentally shutting down essential lighting and camera equipment. After the 5th such incident, director John Badham had the effects team create non-functional duplicate panels for Sheedy's scenes, realistic-looking props that weren't connected to anything. When Jennifer dramatically unlocks a security door in the NORAD facility, Sheedy is actually turning a knob attached to nothing, with the door operated remotely by a crew member. A real electrical surge nearly killed the cast. During filming of the climactic war room sequence, a catastrophic electrical malfunction nearly resulted in tragedy. The elaborate set featured over 12 miles of wiring to power hundreds of monitors, blinking lights, and control panels. When filming the scene where Wopar runs through nuclear war scenarios, a power surge caused a massive electrical failure. Several actors received painful shocks, and Barry Corbin was briefly hospitalized after being thrown from his chair when a control panel shorted out. The incident occurred when rainwater from a leaking studio roof seeped into the electrical system, creating multiple short circuits. The power surge was so intense it melted components in 5 cameras and permanently damaged most of the practical computer equipment. Production was shut down for 3 days while electricians rewired the entire set with additional safeguards. When filming resumed, several actors refused to touch any of the control panels without wearing rubber-soled shoes. In the final cut, you can actually spot the difference. Before the accident, generals confidently press buttons barehanded. After the accident, several officers are conspicuously wearing gloves when interacting with the control panels. The studio thought the movie would flop. MGM had so little faith in WarGames that they nearly sold the distribution rights before completion. Internal memos reveal executives considered the film too cerebral and lacking sufficient action for its target audience. The studio's marketing department struggled to position the movie, at various points suggesting it be promoted as a teen romance, a comedy, or a straight thriller. Test screenings initially seemed to confirm these fears. Early audience feedback forms included comments like, "Too much talking, not enough explosions, and don't understand all the computer stuff." The studio responded by demanding substantial edits, including cutting several dialogue scenes explaining the technology and adding more footage of military hardware. Director John Badham fought these changes, eventually reaching a compromise that preserved most of the technical content while tightening the pacing. The studio remained pessimistic, scheduling the film for a limited release in June 1983, traditionally a dumping ground for movies expected to underperform. When WarGames instead opened to strong reviews and robust box office, MGM was caught unprepared with insufficient prints available to meet theater demand. The film they had nearly abandoned went on to become the studio's highest-grossing release of 1983 and received 3 Academy Award nominations. The simulation graphics were revolutionary technology. The iconic global thermonuclear war simulations seen on WOPR's screens represented cutting-edge computer graphics that pushed 1983 technology to its absolute limits. These sequences, showing missile trajectories and nuclear explosions spreading across a world map, were created by Colin Cantwell, who had previously designed spacecraft models for 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Star Wars. Cantwell spent 4 months programming these simulations on a VAX 11780 supercomputer at the Information International Inkiern facility, the same system used for Tron's groundbreaking effects. Each frame of the nuclear war simulation took nearly 20 minutes to render, with the complete sequence requiring over 600 hours of computer time. The technological constraints were so severe that when Badham requested changes to the simulation sequence, Cantwell reportedly threw a chair across the room in frustration, knowing each minor adjustment would require days of additional rendering time. These graphic sequences, which occupy less than 6 minutes of screen time, consumed almost a quarter of the film's special effects budget. When completed, they represented the most realistic computer simulation of nuclear war ever created for public viewing. So accurate that several military advisors expressed concern about their potential intelligence value. The famous backdoor was based on a real vulnerability. The movie's central plot point, that WOPR's creator installed a backdoor password based on his son's name, wasn't Hollywood invention. This security vulnerability was based on an actual incident that technical consultant Willis Ware revealed to the writers under condition of anonymity. In 1980, a programmer working on an early warning system had indeed created an unauthorized access point using his child's name as the password. This breach was discovered during a routine security audit and quietly patched, with the programmer facing criminal charges that were later dropped in exchange for his cooperation with security officials. What makes this particularly chilling is that, according to declassified documents, at least 7 other critical military systems from that era were eventually found to contain similar backdoors, unauthorized access points created by programmers for their convenience during development, then never removed when the systems went live. The film's depiction of this vulnerability was so accurate that it reportedly led to a comprehensive review of password protocols throughout the Department of Defense, resulting in the identification and closure of numerous potential access points similar to the fictional Joshua backdoor. A real WOPR computer existed. While most assume WOPR was entirely fictional, a remarkably similar system actually existed. The 474L Hemisphere Defense System, nicknamed the WOPR by military personnel, performed many of the functions attributed to WOPR in the film. Operational from 1962 to 1980, this IBM-built system continuously ran nuclear war simulations, analyzing potential Soviet attack patterns and calculating optimal response strategies. Like the fictional WOPR, it was designed to learn from simulated conflicts, refining its response recommendations through an early form of machine learning. The system was decommissioned just 3 years before WarGames was released, primarily because military leaders became uncomfortable with its increasing autonomy in suggesting nuclear strike options. According to Dr. Herbert Lin, a former defense analyst who worked with the system, the similarities between our actual Whopper and the film's Whopper were uncomfortable enough that several senior officers contacted the filmmakers to find out who had leaked classified information. No leak was ever found. The writers had simply extrapolated from publicly available information about military computing, inadvertently creating a fictional system that mirrored classified reality with disturbing accuracy. The fictional NORAD location caused real problems. The film depicts NORAD's command center as being inside Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, which was accurate. However, it incorrectly shows characters driving directly to the entrance through a forest road. This fictional access point created real-world headaches for military personnel. In the months following the film's release, Colorado Park Rangers reported a significant increase in tourists attempting to locate the entrance to NORAD depicted in the movie. Some visitors became so insistent that they approached restricted military zones, requiring intervention by security forces. The problem became serious enough that the Air Force issued press releases clarifying that no such road existed and that unauthorized approaches to the actual facility would result in arrest. Despite these warnings, the Colorado Springs Tourism Board reported that WarGames-inspired visits became their most requested attraction throughout the mid-1980s. The actual NORAD facility eventually added a section to its visitor information specifically stating, "There is no forest road entrance as shown in the movie. WarGames and tours of the operational facility are not available to the general public." This disclaimer remained in their informational materials for over a decade. A working war dialer was built on set. For scenes showing David's war dialer program in action, the production team needed a device that could realistically display a phone dialing multiple numbers in sequence. Rather than rely on visual effects, they built a functional auto dialer using modified telephone equipment. This practical prop worked too well. During a test run in the production office, the war dialer accidentally called a sequence that included the direct emergency line to the Santa Monica Police Department. The call triggered an emergency response protocol, resulting in armed officers surrounding the production office building. The incident led to a formal warning from the FBI about unauthorized use of auto dialing technology. To continue filming without legal complications, the production team had to register their device with the telephone company and agree to only dial disconnected numbers from a pre-approved list during actual filming. This functional war dialer, intended as merely a background prop, eventually became evidence in a 1984 congressional hearing on telecommunications security, with lawmakers citing the ease with which the film crew created a working hacking device as evidence of vulnerabilities in the phone system. The game that never existed became real. Global Thermonuclear War, the simulation game that drives the film's plot, didn't exist when the movie was made. The on-screen game was simply animation created for the film, with no actual playable version developed. Within months of the film's release, however, bootleg versions began appearing on early computer bulletin board systems. Programmed by fans, these unauthorized games attempted to recreate the experience shown in the movie, complete with crude missile trajectory animations and maps of nuclear devastation. By 1985, over a dozen different versions were in circulation, some sophisticated enough to include actual strategic data about missile capabilities and population centers. These unauthorized games became so popular that they caught the attention of federal authorities. Several game creators received cease and desist letters citing potential violations of defense information statutes. The phenomenon came full circle in 1998 when the Department of Defense, recognizing the educational value, commissioned an official global thermonuclear war simulation for use in military colleges, a training tool directly inspired by the fictional game that had once caused so much concern. The most startling fact about WarGames remains virtually unknown outside classified circles. In the film, Joshua is both the name of Professor Falcon's deceased son and the backdoor password to the WOPR system. What audiences didn't know was that Joshua was the actual code name for a real artificial intelligence project under development by DARPA when the film was released. Project Joshua was an experimental program begun in 1982 to develop self-learning algorithms for battlefield decision-making. Though smaller in scope than the fictional WOPR, it shared the core concept of a computer system that could independently evaluate military scenarios and suggest response options. After WarGames premiered in 1983, DARPA officials were alarmed by the coincidental naming similarity. Concerned about public perception and congressional scrutiny, they quietly renamed and restructured the project. Elements of Joshua were eventually incorporated into other defense programs, but the original project, with its uncomfortably prescient name, was officially terminated in late 1983. Decades later, former DARPA director Robert Cooper acknowledged the connection in a technology conference, noting, "Sometimes Hollywood gets too close to the truth entirely by accident. WarGames didn't expose a real program, but it asked exactly the right questions about where our research was heading." The film that seemed like science fiction had inadvertently predicted the exact direction of classified military AI research, ultimately altering its course through nothing more than a coincidental creative choice. WarGames wasn't just an entertaining thriller that captured the early 1980s fascination with computer technology. It was a cultural inflection point that fundamentally changed how we think about technology, security, and the potential dangers of automation. Its impact extended far beyond box office numbers, influencing everything from government policy to the public perception of hacking. The legacy of WarGames lives on in our modern digital landscape. The questions it raised about the relationship between humans and machines, about safeguards and vulnerabilities, remain as relevant today as they were in 1983. In an era of increasingly autonomous systems and artificial intelligence, the film's final message, that some games should only be played by humans, feels less like science fiction and more like prophecy. If you enjoyed these revelations about the film that changed how a generation viewed technology, hit that subscribe button and check out our other videos exploring the hidden stories behind classic films. And remember, sometimes the most important lesson is knowing when to stop playing the game. The only winning move is to subscribe.